first landform I want to look at is the periglacial landform here, which is a part of the exogenic landscape. And the paper we published on the periglacial landforms is called, and this is a fairly long title, but I will explain it in a minute, Evidence of Widespread Degraded Amazonian Age Ice Ridge Deposits in the Transition Zone Between Elysium Rise and Utopia Planitia Mars. Guidelines for the Recognition of Degraded Ice Ridge Deposits. So, just to highlight the main things here. First of all, we have widespread ice ridge deposits in this region, and this is an unusual location. There's been not a whole lot of reports of ice ridge deposits in the region. Secondly, we're talking about degraded ice ridge deposits. Not a lot have been done on looking at ice ridge deposits, and there are different degradation stages. And finally, we try to outline some possibilities to recognize these degraded ice ridge deposits. Basically, this has implications for the extent of periglacial deposits on Mars in general, understanding the degradation of ice ridge deposits, and also the formation model for these ice ridge deposits. So, ice ridge deposits, the ice ridge deposits I'm talking about is called concentric crater fill, or CCF, low-bait debris aprons, LDA, or lineated valley fill. And they have been known since Karen Sharper 77 and Squires 78. And they look something like this. This is a well-known hourglass formation, simply because the formation itself looks like an hourglass. And these ice ridge deposits here is generally characterized by distinct lineations. You can see them here in these images here. They have a funny basketball looking like texture. They have convex profiles, and then they have special crater morphology. So if you look on the deposit itself, there will be impact craters which has a funny morphology, and it has been called ring-mold craters by Crescent Head 2008 or oyster shell craters by Mangles 2003. Generally, it has been suggested that the distinct lineations and the convex profiles is indicative of viscous flow of ice, and that the basketball texture is indicative of sublimation of interstitial ice. So, if you look at where these kind of deposits have been found beforehand, you should just ignore the yellow ones here and then look at the purple and blue deposits here. And what you see is that they are distributed in two 25-degree wide latitudinal bands. Also, several different formation models have been suggested for these ice ridge deposits. Some have suggested frost creep, ice lubricated rockfall, landslides, or glacial origin of these deposits. Okay, so just to look at the study area once again. One study has been performed by Ernst et al. Hauber et al. 2005, finding some of these ice ridge deposits in this flank depression of Icarus Taurus. Otherwise, the closest studies so far finding ice ridge deposits has been up here, and a new study by Pierce et al. From 2011 finds some ice ridge deposits in the Utopia region, and then of course a lot of reports from Deuterolinus and Protolinus mensae. Basically what we find is that we have ice ridge deposits in all of this region here, and not only on the flank depression. This is what you can see here. So just to show you the map, and here I have highlighted all the ice ridge deposits that that we found in the region. So more or less this entire triangle. All right. Okay. Fine. What we see is that we have 212 different examples of concentric crater fill, CCF. What is most interesting about these deposits are that they are distributed in fairly different environments. We see them all the way down to 31.2 degrees north and up to 40 degrees north. And we also see them in very different elevations. So elevation ranging between minus 4,250 meters up all the way up to 4,575 meters. So we have an elevational span of 9 kilometers. And this is kind of unusual because this suggests that we have really different environments where we have these deposits existing. So this is some images. This is all craters, so they should look like depressions. What you see here is a pristine CCF deposits. And what is characteristic by these deposits is that you have these kind of concentric zones here and some chaotic lace-like patterns, as you can see here. Other deposits look more degraded, as you see up here. You have some with irregular surfaces and fractured rises. And then finally, we see some craters which just has a really thin veneer of this kind of deposit within the deposit. So very different thicknesses distributed all over the area. The low-baked debris aprons here. This is a picture of a mesa with the low-baked debris apron around it. And the low-baked debris aprons in the area is by far the biggest deposit, with approximately around 16,000 square kilometers. Like the CCF deposits, they have a fairly wide distribution. And what is interesting, and unlike other regions where we have seen low-baked debris aprons, is that they exist around mesas which is having 100 to 300 meter high relief, which is much lower relief than what we know from the Frederick terrains. Generally, they look similar to what we know already. They have this pitted basket-like texture. They have lineations, as you can see them here. And they have this squared-like texture. And then they have what we call the fish scale morphology. And finally, the last periglacial deposits in the region is the lineated valley fill, or LVF. And they have these characteristics with lineations along the valley walls. We see divergence and confluence of flow. We see fracturing along the sides of the valleys, and we see thickening of deposits within the valleys, suggesting that we have material coming from outside into the valleys. So, this is a bit busy slide, but as I said earlier on, these kind of ice-rich deposits have some interesting crater morphologies. And these kind of crater morphologies is what other workers also have seen before, what President Head 2008 have reported and others. So this is just different kind of impact morphologies that we see on the ice-rich deposits, and is fairly well known. Over here, you can see the different types of deposits that I have been looking at. But what we also find in the region is some additional features looking similar to these craters over here, but have some differences to them. And when we are looking closer at them, we seem to see a degradational sequence of these kind of craters. And this is just what I'm going to show here. So what we have down here is what other people, or what I will call a normal ring mold crater, or regular ring mold crater, that other peoples also have been seeing in these types of ice-rich deposits. And what we then suggest is that if this deposit gets unstable and sublimates away partly because of climatic conditions, then we'll start getting sublimation, and this depression around here will grow, and eventually we'll end up just having a mesa, something like this that we see up here. And if we continue to degrade these kind of craters, we'll end up with sublimation from the sides and concentric fracturing, ending up with a knob looking like this. And basically, this kind of degradation of impact craters is similar to what Schultz and Lutz in 1988 proposed for degradation of normal craters. And this is here illustrated by Kerber and Head, 2010. So what you see here is basically a lot of impact craters, which are depressions. And as you are eroding away the unit these impacts are into, you simply start to invert the topography. So you get something looking like this, or this over here. And if you continue eroding your unit, you simply end up inverting the crater to being a knob, because the area which has been impacted has been compressed and is more resistant to erosion. So this is a bit busy slide as well. And what you just have to get out of this is that we were looking at these kind of normal craters and the degraded craters and see if we can find some kind of clustering. So see if some deposits were more degraded than others. And we saw indeed some clustering. We saw clustering of normal craters in these regions, and up here we see a clustering of degraded craters. Supposing that these deposits up here might be more degraded than those ones down here and here. So the implications of this study was that we see CCF deposits coexisting on very different environments, which either can suggest that these kind of deposits is really stable over different environments, or suggesting that we are isolating the ice-rich deposits, so it's kind of insulated from the atmosphere and the climatic conditions. We did a trim line analysis that I haven't showed you, which indicate that we have deflation of these kind of deposits in a range of 150 to 350 meters, which is in order of what other studies also suggest. We have here Dixon et al. 2010 suggesting the CCF deposits deflating in the order of 1,000 meters. Pierce et al. Suggests something like 650 meters in the Tobia region, and other studies of lineated valley fill is in the same order. So we consider that this is within the range that have already been suggested. As I already said, the thickness of the CCF deposits vary a lot locally. And this can either be because of the depositional regime. They might have, the CCF deposits might have had different accumulation span because you have impacts at different times. They might also result in highly variable climate conditions on a local scale. Or it can also be controlled by the degradational regime, so that what is controlling the thickness of the deposit is actually the substrate lag on top of the deposit, which might vary in thickness or might vary in content of dust and rock. Different models for degradation our model for degradation stages of low-bay debris aprons is shown here. So this is what we suggest is a normal low-bay debris apron. You have ice, you have material falling from the mesas and transported further out to the summit here, creating some nice convex profiles of low-bay debris aprons. And this is what is illustrated here. As the climate changes, our morphology gets controlled by the sublimation. So we have enhanced sublimation close to the mesa, we get sublimation over here, and we get inverted topography, creating what we call the fish scale texture, what we can see here. Or basically we can illustrate it like this. This is a normal low-bay debris apron from Deuteralinus mensae, and taken from Google Mars. And this is what we see in the Galaxias region, which we suggest is the sublimation controlled low-bay debris apron. So basically, the periglacial study we have been doing here shows that we have ice material that is more widespread than previously suggested. So this map I showed you earlier on should definitely have some pixels of ice-rich material here. Plus, since not a lot of people have been doing studies on degraded ice-rich deposits, there might be other degraded ice-rich deposits found elsewhere. And this was the reason why we were trying to outline the texture and arm seam of all these ring mold craters for possibility to resolve this degradational story. This study also favors an ice depositional model because we don't see a lot of topography in the area, and therefore it's kind of unlikely that these low-bay debris aprons is formed due to rockfall or landslide model. And we suggest that future work should be working with constraining the different kind of degradation stages, looking at the ring mold morphologies, the textures, and also trying to evaluate the impact of different substrate lag. Okay.